Hello students, this is Kanika. Welcome to my channel Prep Biology. So today in this lecture we are going to discuss about the menstrual cycle. So menstrual cycle is the reproductive cycle in the female primates. Under the primates we have monkeys, apes, humans, etc. So in the female primates, this reproductive cycle takes place. That cycle is called the menstrual cycle. So interval, the time interval of this cycle is about 28 to 29 days. So it will repeat at an average interval of about 28 to 29 days. Okay, so the menstrual cycle contains different phases. So these all phases completes under the 28 to 29 days. Okay. So there are very important two terms related to it. First is the menarche. What is the meaning of menarche? Menarche is the first menstrual cycle. Okay, the first menstruation or the first menstrual cycle in the female primate is called the menarche. Okay, so menarche is the first menstruation begins at the puberty, that is called the menarche. That is called the menarche. Okay, if we see the definition, that the first menstruation begins at the puberty, that is called the menarche. Now next is the menopause. Menopause is the condition when the menstrual cycle ceases at a given age, or it will stops at a given age. That is called the menopause. Pause means stop. Okay, so in the human menstruation ceases or stops about 50 years of age, that condition is called the menopause. I hope these two terms are clear to you all. Okay, so let's start with the different phases of the menstrual cycle. Phases of menstrual cycle. So there are three phases of the menstrual cycle. First is the menstrual phase, second is the follicular phase, third is the luteal phase. So we are going to discuss about these three phases one by one. So the menstrual phase, we know that the interval of the menstrual cycle is about 28 to 29 days. Okay, and after the 28 to 29 days it will repeat next cycle. Okay, so the first 5 days of the menstrual cycle have the menstrual phase. Next, the 6th to 14th day of the menstrual cycle have the follicular phase, and the last phase, that is the 15th to 29th day of the menstrual cycle, contains the luteal phase. Okay, so these days are important. Now first 5 days, that is the menstrual phase. The menstrual phase flows occurs last for about 3 to 5 days. Okay, so the menstrual phase flows occurs last for 3 to 5 days. Okay, this is the menstrual phase. The menstruation occurs about 3 to 5 days. In this phase, as you all can see, this is the reproductive system of the human female. So we know that this is the uterus, and the body of the uterus contains three layers, as we all have studied in the previous class: endometrium, perimetrium, and myometrium. So in the menstrual phase of the menstrual cycle, the innermost lining of the uterus, that is the endometrium lining, will break. Okay, so So in this phase, in the menstrual phase, the endometrium lining of the uterus will break. Okay. When it break, the different blood vessels which form the liquid. Okay. And when endometrium break, the different blood vessels forms the liquid, and this liquid comes out from the vagina. Okay. As you all can see this diagram, this endometrium lining will break, this will form the liquid, blood vessels forms the liquid, and it will come out from the vagina. Okay. So this is the phase that is called the menstrual phase. Okay. If now two conditions takes place when menstruation occurs and when menstruation not occurs. Okay. So understand it carefully. Now, when the ovum that release from the ovary, it will fertilize by the sperm, then the menstruation does not occurs. Okay. So when the ovum is fertilized by the sperm and it causes the pregnancy, so then in that condition the menstruation will not occurs. But in the normal condition, when the ovum is released from the ovary, but do not it do not fertilized by the sperm, then the menstruation cycle occurs. Okay. So this is the difference. I hope this is clear to you all. So in the menstrual phase, these all events occurs in the uterus. Okay. So next is the follicular phase. So the follicular phase of the menstrual cycle occurs in the 6th to 14th day of the menstrual cycle, and it is also called the proliferative phase or ovulatory phase. Why it is so called? Because in the follicular phase, the proliferation of the cells occurs, and the ovum is released from the Graafian follicle. That is why it is called the ovulatory phase. So, if we see this chart, understand it carefully. So, this is the chart that shows 1 to 29th day of the menstrual cycle. This is the first day and this is the 29th day. So the first phase of the menstrual cycle, that is the menstrual phase or the menstruation, that we have studied, that occurs in the 1st to 5th day of the menstrual cycle. Now the next phase is the follicular phase, that is called the proliferative phase. The follicular phase occurs from 6th to 14th day of the menstrual phase. So in this phase, what happens? If we see in this chart, there are ovarian events occurs, there are ovarian hormones shows, and pituitary hormone level is also seen in this chart. So in this follicular phase, what happens? We know that in the oogenesis process, the primary follicle will form and then the primary follicle will mature and it will finally becomes Graafian follicle, that we already discussed. Okay. So in the follicular phase, the primary follicle mature into the Graafian follicle, and when the Graafian follicle matures, then the endometrium layer or that endometrium lining of the uterus regenerate. Okay. Regenerate. Why it regenerate? Because in the menstruation phase, this is the menstruation phase, and in the menstruation phase it will break, and in the next phase, that is the follicular phase, it will again regenerate. As you all can see, this is the uterine events. In this, in the menses period, it will break, and in the in the follicular phase, it will regenerate. Okay, so when the endometrium regenerate, then it will change some pituitary and ovarian hormones it will induce some pituitary hormones and the ovarian hormones. Okay, so as you all can see here in this chart, these are the ovarian hormones and these are the pituitary hormones. The ovarian hormones during the follicular phase, these are the ovarian hormones. This is the estrogen and this is the progesterone. So, the ovarian hormones and the pituitary hormones contains FSH, that is the follicular stimulating hormone, and the LH, that is the luteinizing hormone. The FSH and LH become gradually increase. It will increase. As you all can see, this is the follicular phase, and the LH and the FSH will gradually increase during the follicle development. Okay, after when the LH and FSH are gradually increase, and it stimulate the follicle development, and it also stimulate the estrogen. As you all can see here, this is the follicular phase, and the level of the estrogen is also increased. Okay, so in the follicular phase, LH and FSH increases in the pituitary gland, and in the ovarian hormone, the estrogen will increase. I hope this is clear to you all. Now, what happened when at the 14th day, this is the 14th day graph that shows the at the 14th day of the menstrual cycle, that is the middle of the cycle. This is the middle of the cycle, the follicular phase, the last day of the follicular phase. At this day, the LH leads to maximum. Okay, the LH level is a maximum at this day. When the luteinizing hormone maximum, that condition is called the LH surge. Okay, that condition is called the LH surge. When it happens, it induces the rupturing Graafian follicle. Okay, so what happens when at the 14th day of the menstrual cycle, that is the midday of the menstrual cycle, LH will lead to maximum, that is called the LH surge, that induce the rupturing of the follicle. Now look at the chart. If you all can see, this is the ovarian events. The development of the follicles takes place, the primary, secondary, tertiary, and last is this is the mature follicle, that is the Graafian follicle. Now at the 14th day, the Graafian follicle will rupture. Why it rupture? Because the LH will maximum, the level of the LH is maximum at this day. When the rupturing of the Graafian follicle takes place, it will release the ovum. It will release the ovum from the Graafian follicle. That process is called the ovulation. So that's why the follicular phase of the menstrual cycle is also called the ovulatory phase. Why? Because at the 14th day of the menstrual cycle, the level of the LH is maximum, that is called the LH surge, and then it induces the rupturing of the Graafian follicle that release the ovum. As you all can see, the ovulation takes place. I hope this follicular phase is clear to you all. That is the third phase of the menstrual cycle is the luteal phase. Okay, understand it carefully. The luteal phase occurs at the 15th to 29th day of the menstrual cycle. Okay, so as you all can see, the luteal phase occurs from 15th to 29th day of the menstrual cycle, and the luteal phase is also called the secretory phase. Okay, so what happens in the luteal phase? First, understand with the chart. The luteal or the secretory phase, the uterine events occurs, as you all can see, from the follicular phase. The endometrium layer regenerate and it will complete the lining of the endometrium at the luteal phase. Okay, and what is the level of the ovarian hormone? As you all can see, at the follicular phase the estrogen will increase, but at the luteal phase the progesterone will increase. What happen in the ovarian events? When the ovulation occurs, ovum is released from the Graafian follicle. It will lead to the formation of development of the corpus luteum during the luteal phase, and the pituitary hormones will decrease its levels during the luteal phase. Okay, so this is the luteal phase. Now understand it briefly. What happens? We know that the ovulation occurs and the ovum is released during the follicular phase. When the ovum is released from the Graafian follicle, the left part, this is the left part of the Graafian follicle. Okay, so the remaining part of the Graafian follicle will transform into the corpus luteum. Okay, will transform into the corpus luteum. Okay, when it transform into the corpus luteum, it will increase, it will secrete the large amount of the progesterone. This is very, very important, that when the remaining part of the Graafian follicle will transform into the corpus luteum, as you all can see, the remaining part of the Graafian follicle transform into the corpus luteum, and it will increase, it will secrete the ovarian hormone that is called the progesterone. The level of the progesterone will increase. Okay, now next, after this we have two conditions. Okay, we have two conditions. First is when the fertilization occurs, when fertilization not occurs. So when fertilization not occurs, in the absence of the fertilization, the corpus luteum degenerate. It will degenerate. As you all can see, it will decrease its size and it will degenerate. It will degenerate and causes the disintegration of the endometrium. So it will cause the disintegration of endometrium. Okay, when the disintegration occurs, as you all can see, this is the phase when it will, the endometrium fully grown. When the corpus luteum degenerate and the disintegration of endometrium takes place and the next cycle begins, that is the new cycle begins, and the menstrual phase is again occurs. Okay, so when the fertilization not occurs, then the corpus luteum will degenerate and it will cause the disintegration or the breakdown of the endometrium. Again, a new cycle begins after 29 days. So, second condition is when the fertilization takes place. When the fertilization takes place, it will it will cause it will cause or it will help. The corpus luteum is essential for the implantation implantation okay, implantation of the ovum and other pregnancy events. Okay, so when fertilization occurs, the corpus luteum secrete the progesterone, and progesterone helps in the essential for the implantation of the ovum and the different pregnancy events. Okay, so this is all about the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle. So I hope these all events or the different phases of the menstrual cycle is clear to you all. The levels of this chart is very, very important for your board exam point of view. These levels of the pituitary hormones, ovarian events, ovarian hormone levels and uterine events. These all events are very, very important in different phases of the life cycle. So make sure this chart is clear to you all. Okay. So this is all about today's lecture. If you like this lecture, like, share and subscribe my channel, that is the Prep Biology. Thank you so much.